Hey Mindset Community, Dr. Ellen here, coming to you today with your next tire talk. So with the Super Bowl last night, it's the perfect time to discuss and begin our concussion lecture series. So let's begin and give you a little bit of information about what a concussion is and what do we do about it. So I am a certified concussion rehabilitation specialist, as well as I hold specialties in vestibular rehabilitation, as well as manual therapy. So as you can imagine, I do a lot of manual therapy with the neck and the base of the head, as well as dealing with all the neurological complications with regards to a concussion. So we see this a lot here at Mindset. So if you do have more questions on what we talk about today, reach out to us, because we're going to do this lecture series and it might be a few videos until we get to your question. However, let me know if you do have any questions. This is what we do all the time. So the term concussion is pretty vague and imprecise. Now, there's been a lot of money added into research to try to quantify that better, and we do have a lot of wonderful tools out there, but we still don't have enough yet. And so more information is coming in order to help not only families and athletes, as well as clinicians make these decisions better. But we do know plenty of information. So let's tell you what we do know. So number one is there's 6 different types of concussions, or in research a lot of times it's called trajectories. And so this just determines what area of the brain was most likely affected by the traumatic event. Because what happens is when the brain gets hit, let's say it gets hit on the side, you're gonna have the initial impact, but then the brain also then sloshes, if you will, to the other side of the brain for a possible secondary impact. And then it can actually hit back and forth as the impact begins to decrease. So there can be multiple forms of impact, and that's applying that it's just a straight lateral force and no rotation happened at the head or things like that. It can actually be pretty complicated to try to figure that all out. But the main 6 types are called vestibular, ocular, migraine, cervical, mood and anxiety, as well as cognitive. So those are kind of the 6 main areas that can be affected by the brain that we do mostly know. The other thing that happens that we do know is the physiology that happens after impact. Normally in the body, when there's a traumatic event, the body floods blood and swelling and inflammation and all of that stuff to begin the process of healing. Those are all normal responses to an injury. However, at the brain, it's different. It's much more defensive. So what ends up happening is we end up walling off that area that's been affected by the traumatic event. So then the problem comes, we have this demand for healing, right? And in the brain, usually that's fueled by glucose. So we have this demand for glucose, but we can't get it there because we don't have any blood supply to the area. So we have the demand is high, the supply is low, and we call that a metabolic mismatch. And we know in research that that can happen for up to 30 days after an injury. So it's really important as a clinician that we pair not only how an athlete or how a person, let's say who was in a motor vehicle accident, how they feel, but we pair it with objective findings that we can measure to determine the performance and the function of those tissues. So we don't want to do just based on how a person feels. We need to be able to measure it so that we can document progress and function of that tissue. And why is that key? That's really important, especially in the young athletes that we see, because their brains aren't fully formed until about their 20s. So this is why combining evidence and research along with clinical practice becomes so key, because we want to make sure that we send athletes back at the right time, at the right pace for their physiology, not just based solely on a protocol, because your body doesn't know what's supposed to happen at 2 weeks. It goes at its own pace depending upon the injury and your overall health, and as well how much you're sleeping. And we'll talk about all these different complications for healing and in another lecture. But so this is why we love what we do here at Mindset, because we do take such a detailed approach to recovery, and we combine this with an amazing network here in Kalamazoo, Michigan, to provide you with the best possible outcomes for recovery. So we'll talk to you next week for lecture number 2. We love you more than you know. Have a great week.